My name is Catherine. I'm the director at Straub Outdoors and a member of a diverse team. And I really appreciate being invited to share a story. I look forward to hearing other folks' stories as well as we move together in what I call perpetual learning and listening mode for myself. I do want to say that everything that I'm about to share is really a group effort with a lot of different voices involved. And my role is not to speak for those people, but to amplify those voices and to be as true to their messages as possible. I am not an expert on evaluation. I am a homeschool mom that just started becoming an environmental educator long ago because I just didn't see programs that my son was interested in. And so that's how I got to here today. So I am still very much a learner in this, and I'm really finding a lot of value from this workshop. I want to thank Charzi for a great conversation yesterday. It's always great to touch base with someone who thinks a lot about these thoughts and really helped shape kind of how I think about what we've done in the last 6 years, and to our JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee in our organization. I met with them last night and ran through this and got their thoughts as well. So it's a very short presentation. I lastly want to thank 3 people that were instrumental in the evaluations that we did a couple years ago. And those people are Antonia Decker, our community engagement coordinator, Lena Backham, an education consultant, and Katie Guevara, who was our lead educator at the time. And this would not have happened without them. So I just really appreciate that. So see if this works. Yeah. So when we think about identity, I have to just full disclosure, we're very focused on Latino or Latinx engagement. We're a very small organization. So 6 years ago, we had kind of a light bulb moment for us that was really rather painful, but was very good. And it really necessitated that we have some internal dialogue about what we're doing and why we're doing it and who we're doing it for. And so we decided to focus on Latino community, including students, their families, and the people that educate them, because that population of students is now approaching 40% in our home base of Salem-Keizer area. And it's even higher in some of the other schools that we serve. Not being able to do everything all at once, we are still focusing primarily on that while we make strides forward with in serving other communities. So we really first needed to talk with folks about what they preferred to be identified as and what other folks like the school district, ODE, the census, Department of Justice, how they were defining them. And so Latino is from those from Latin American country, and Hispanic, I didn't realize until relatively recently, was kind of an invented term in the 1970s. Our school district in the US Census uses Hispanic/Latino. So if you hear me say that, it's usually when I'm quoting statistics from that. The people, this is from a national data collection, people that we speak with and that we relate with, students and families, a good quarter of them really say they want to be identified as American. And so sometimes segregating them in our minds or in evaluation has a contraindicative purpose. So I want to be mindful of how they choose to be identified. Most families that we work with and students do not use the terms Latinx or Latine. And so we refer to that only when we're working with folks in academia, grant funders, things like that. And recognition that this is a very diverse group and there's lots of diversity. It's not a monolithic culture, and we need to recognize that as well. Culture, we have found that in working with some of the communities that those familial bonds are very important, and that trust building is an incredibly important part of evaluation. And it really directly influences the kind and quantity of information that we get and how our JEDI committee interprets that and some of our other community stakeholders. And also a culture of respect. And that has also a direct, we've noticed, influence on the kinds of information that we get, because there is this desire not to offend or show disrespect. And when you're asking for an honest answer, that's a very loaded question for some folks, and I want to recognize that. So our wake-up call was in 2016. We did a pilot in spring of 2015 for a residential outdoor school with non-Title I schools, and it went swimmingly. So we thought I really wanted to expand that to Title I schools, some more diverse student populations, and it was an absolute failure. Both schools canceled within a couple weeks before the outdoor school sessions. for the shades of the same reason. There were parents and guardians who were very uncomfortable with signing the permission forms because they didn't feel comfortable having their children go out to this outdoor school experience. And this was in West Salem at Camp Grider, so it wasn't very far away by our standards, but it was very far away by some other folks' standards. And so we had a choice. We could go back and continue serving non-Title I schools that were really appreciating what we were offering, or we could figure out how to change the paradigm so that some of the students from Title I schools could access. And we were in that mindset still in this bestowing kind of paradigm of, we've got this really great thing, we just need to figure out how to convince the Latino community that it is just wonderful. And that was a really, it turned out to be the opposite way that we should be looking at it. So in 2017, we realized, no, the real question is, how do we adapt and change our program with their input and co-create something that's going to be something that they feel comfortable and excited about and that they want to participate in. So we launched a research project. We were unable to secure grant funding because we hadn't shown any strides towards that yet. So we leveraged some private donor funding to hire an education consultant, Lena Backham, who has now gone on to found her own bilingual school, and a community engagement coordinator, Antonia Decker, both of whom speak Spanish fluently, assisted by Katie Guevara, also a fluent Spanish speaker and identify as Latina. And so they spent a year doing, incorporating or employing grounded theory to do qualitative, largely qualitative focused interviews with the parent advisory committee members through the Willamette Education Service District, and these parents have agreed to represent their Title I schools. So it was a small sample of 26 that was augmented by talking with high schoolers and students themselves, and then synthesizing and analyzing that with Lena Backham's help. She also developed a culturally responsive rubric to help us evaluate our programs. And that was right before OSU Outdoor School Program launched theirs, and several staff training modules. She helped with instructional coaching as well. And then we developed the Naturaleza Ora advisory team, which has now become a permanent part of our governance structure and are all voting board members. And that continues today. So the learning and listening mode is still very much a part of what we do. And we are the first person, as I said to Charzi, failing forward is part of our MO and part of our learning process. So findings, they were revelatory, they were unexpected, and they have really changed our entire organization at every level. This is just one example. So we were asking, how do you feel about being in nature? What kinds of nature experiences do you enjoy? And really backing that up with the help of the Naturaleza Ora committee and our staff to say, well, first, should we ask them how they define nature? And as it turns out, that was a really pivotal question and influenced all the other questions. So it turns out, really, there were 3 definitions of nature, 2 that were largely positive and 1 that was largely negative. And so we had to really be defined internally what we meant by something is, to us at the time, basic as nature before we moved forward. And that's carried through in all of our other evaluative tools, defining those terms and understanding how our communities define them. So what are the features that came out of that? Our educators are people that our students can look at and say, I identify with that person. It's not just racial or ethnic, it's not just socioeconomic, but they're people that have the capability of building trust and that rapport with our students. And a lot of that is racial ethnic for our communities. And they teach using a variety of methods. Lena Backham really helped us understand that emergent bilingual students and students who are acquiring English, teaching methods and methodologies look different. And they should be. We should meet them where they are rather than expecting them to come to where our instruction is. And that evaluation is part of our experience. We're evaluating all the time and asking difficult questions and hearing difficult responses sometimes and honoring those and being thankful for those so that we can move forward with our eyes fully open and continually opening more and more. All right, so defining terms, going back to this is one of our educators with our freshwater ecology lesson. We did participate in a research project that was sponsored by Clemson University and Virginia Tech. And these are just some of the terms that were pulled from the survey that they administered to students. And we had a very unique opportunity after that survey was administered. We actually got to have Antonia and Katie go and interview some of the families whose students participated in the program that was studied by that. And the responses were like night and day. They were much different. And one of the things that came up was that these terms seemed obvious to everyone else, but not to the students. And so even things like left out as a colloquialism or idiom, it seems like, wow, that's completely self-explanatory. It was not completely explanatory. And so we've learned to change how we teach and evaluate in response to that. So if we don't use a term in our program, we don't use it in evaluation. But if we do intend to use it in evaluation, we use it in the program, not as a set aside. Now we're going to talk about all the vocabulary, but as a part of the instruction. So it's seamlessly woven into that. And we respect other definitions of terms too. So our definition is not necessarily the definition that carries the day. We honor multiple ones, and we avoid those idioms and colloquialisms whenever possible. And we use pictorial and other things. She's using a whiteboard to help represent those concepts. And so translating concepts, environment was a particularly sticky one. Medio ambiente is a Spanish word that would be the closest corollary, but it also means, as you can imagine, ambience. There is a couple other words that also could be kind of termed as environment. One is like used more in terms of like a hostile environment, the Spanish version of that. And so you need to be careful if you're using environment, which Spanish word for, again, largely emergent bilinguals, which Spanish word is going to be the best corollary. And then we also touch on Chinook-Wawa, because our commitment to indigeneity runs parallel to this. So not something I'll mention a lot here, but and we use pictorial resources a lot. So the pictures below are very similar to the pictures that we would show. And they may say, no, that doesn't mean community to me, and we're all ears. So incorporating evaluation, these are all the ways each day we incorporate evaluation, and we do it seamlessly. So we're not saying now we're going to do evaluation. Are we sacrificing objectivity? Yes, we are. And because we are having the evaluations administered by people that they've been spending a lot of time with, but we are also maintaining trust and a sense of safety, and a safe space, a welcoming space. So that's important. And then also with teachers, guardians, and our program staff. So multiple times throughout the day. We on average spend about 90 minutes a day on evaluation with our adults. That's not including the kids. So a lot of time reflecting on what we're doing. And most importantly, and not most importantly, but just something to keep in mind, everyone comes with a story, everyone comes with a history, everyone comes with their own lenses. And some of those stories are quite disturbing, and the empathy that we have, that we can build in the trust is directly related to that. They're woven together very closely. And so we know that some families are coming to school to only be in school for a short time because their parents are migrant farm workers. We had an instructor whose mother returned to Mexico and was not able to come back for a year. So these are things that have real world impacts. We were launching this during the 2016 to 2020 presidential administration. ICE and deportation was a real issue. And so these all affect, if you're coming at them with the clipboard and asking things that are quantitative, and especially if you don't, you look like me, that can actually cause a lot of anxiety and fear and not be very productive in evaluation. So through all that, the positive part is that we've learned to be very humble, and the humility that was mentioned earlier is definitely part of our ethos, and to be curious. The upside is that we're learning all the time, and that's a wonderful thing. So hopefully that will continue for a long time. I'm putting in my personal email address because at the end of February, I'll be transitioning out of this role and retiring. But I really look forward to continuing my relationship with Straub Outdoors and hopefully with all of you. So thanks so much for allowing me to tell my story, our story.